Everyone who was lucky to hear the phones in the Palace of Industry noted that when listening with both ears, the sound acquired special qualities of ambience and localization, which cannot be reproduced by a single receiver. As such, we firmly believe that this amazing technology has never been used to create such a wonderful illusion. This is how, in 1881, the Scientific American magazine described the first ever demonstration of a stereo system. The French inventor Clement Ader then made a splash with his théâtrophone, when live sound from the Paris Opera was transmitted by speakers at a distance through 2 channels. In the late 19th, early 20th century, this system became extremely popular under various names in France and the UK. Who would have thought that concerts could now be heard in surround sound many miles away from the actors? A century later, taking your music with you is a habit many of us don't even consciously recognize. But for this Ukrainian master, pure sound is just as important as visual aesthetics. I design and manufacture acoustic systems. These are not just your ordinary fare, not just boxes of electronics that produce sound. These are a product that carries an idea and contains a certain philosophy. Vitaly Pototsky developed and produced more than a dozen portable stereo systems. Some of them are in small batches, others just in 1 or 2 copies. He brought an original approach to this sphere where mass production reigns supreme. I like when all the parts are unique. If you see that this is a stainless pipe for a reflex port and a stainless steel handle, then you can be sure that this is real metal, hand-carved, on a turning lathe from a simple aluminum ingot. I do my best to ensure that a maximum number of components are made in Ukraine. How did the designer find a niche in which no Ukrainian craftsman worked? Where does he find inspiration for his extravagant creations? And what needs to be considered when designing and assembling modern speaker systems? UATV tells viewers the story of a master whose work amazed audiophiles from all over the world. By the early 1930s, théâtrophones were completely supplanted by radios and phonographs, while the stereo audio technology migrated to movie theaters. And only in the late 60s, thanks to inventors from the Netherlands, that the legendary boombox with a radio and tape cassette players appeared. It was the first portable player to allow one to take music with them wherever they went. And even when in the 1980s personal audio players replaced boomboxes, the niche of portable audio systems continues to exist to this day. It happened a couple of times that we just went out with friends for a picnic, opened the car doors and turned on the music. And after playing it just for a couple of hours at a moderate volume, the car might fail to start. When this happens in a forest at 11 or 12 p.m. and the car has an automatic transmission, you start thinking how you are going to get home from this forest. The car engine would not start, simply because the music drained its battery. Vitaly scoured every shop in Kiev, but back then, in 2011, he couldn't find a single modern portable stereo system. There were only home musical centers and old-fashioned boomboxes, which were unable to play music for long at a sufficient volume. Now there are many acoustic systems, portable, loud, and there are some with high-quality sound. I would have bought one and left it at that. I think this is what would have happened, but there weren't any back then. Since I couldn't find one, I had to make one myself for my own use. Back then, Vitaly was quite a successful interior designer and thought that since he knew how to design furniture, that he could manage to create a portable speaker. After all, he thought, what could be so difficult about assembling a square box with speakers and a largish battery? Problems started even in the first stage, the body. It's wood. The body must be made of wood, of living wood. In fact, this main principle created the most problems and issues for me, because building a wooden body proved to be more difficult than I could have expected. Today, while assembling another typical speaker system in his workshop, Vitaly recalls that his attempts to create a simple 6-piece body took more than 9 months of exhausting work. I sent the drawings to various furniture companies and to different workshops throughout Ukraine, from west to east. No one could accomplish this task. The bodies burst, cracked, and the workmanship quality was not suitable. It would seem that there isn't any particular difficulty, just 6 parts glued together. But nobody could manage to do this.
Сложности нет особой. 6 деталей склеить вместе но никто не мог справиться.
Then one day Vitaly was told about two brothers, Dmitro and Vadim Havrilenko, who are guitar makers from the city of Bila Tserkva in the Kiev Oblast. The Master of Crafts project already visited them in 2017 and talked about the new generation of Ukrainian electric guitars, having no idea that this very workshop was originally used to produce Vitaly Pototsky's first audio systems. They managed to implement this concept and managed to build this case. And it was at that moment that I understood why I hadn't succeeded before. I turned to furniture companies, but this is not a piece of furniture, this is a musical instrument. These guitar makers make top-notch musical instruments, and the approach is completely different there. An engineer that Vitaly was acquainted with helped him figure out the electronic internal parts. When the first acoustic systems went into the hands of his closest friends and others started asking if it was possible to buy one, the master realized that there was a demand for his original product, especially for UATV. Vitaly Pototsky told about the path he went along since that time. In a decent movie theater, the surround sound system is built to take into account not only the characteristics of speakers, but also the architecture of the hall itself. It is usually said that a room has either good or bad acoustics, that is, the walls and ceilings themselves either help reverberate the sound in such a way that the viewer enjoys it or it interferes. Vitaly Pototsky's audio systems are portable. The body has to be designed to minimize the effect of the environment on its sound. I asked engineers for advice, how this or that shape will behave and how this or that material will behave. Even when making sketches at the design stage, it is already necessary to calculate the shape and the volume. I often go on a hunch. I simply have some kind of inherent natural sense for this. The second part of the sound is the speakers themselves. Vitaly was unable to find a model with suitable characteristics in Ukraine, and to this day, this is the only component of the audio system that's made outside the country. We traveled to Germany and found a factory that produced the necessary components. We drew up and signed a contract with them to produce a personal, exclusive batch of speakers for us. They produced them, we bought them, and I have been using these speakers ever since then. They're designed specifically for this body in terms of size, internal volume, and the electronics were created with exactly these speakers in mind. There are only two of them, and they don't have a subwoofer for bass frequencies, but there's a reflex port. This is a tube inside, the sound of which resonates in such a way that the frequencies are shifted downwards. In fact, it's an artificial bass. Later, in other bodies, Vitaly started using Israeli and Japanese speakers. It has a variable configuration. By shifting the jumpers, the board reconfigures to different characteristics, different speakers, and produces a completely different sound. One board, several models, and different characteristics. I think this innovation turned out to be very cool. No matter how important the technical side is, Vitaly is still much more captivated by developing new designs and manually assembling a body according to his sketches. The first models, shaped like a cuboid in various colors, are still successful, but after the classics, the master wanted to introduce an element of futurism. I drew a concept that turned out to be in quite a daring shape. Though I really liked it, I looked at what I drew and what I had already sold, but I had no idea how to go about actually making it. It is impossible to give a complex curved shape to untreated wood. Vitaly already started thinking about ceramics or polymer 3D printing, when suddenly one of the most typical children's toys came into his creative mind. Stacking pyramids. It's like a Christmas tree. There's a ring, inside goes a stick, and there are similar rings in different diameters and different sizes, and an opening to fit around the stick. The master realized that using this same method, he could decompose a complex curved shape into thin layers of fiberboards and then simply glue them together, and this innovative technique gave Vitaly unprecedented creative freedom. Recently, he was asked to develop a unique audio system as a gift. The person is engaged in kendo. It is a form of Japanese martial arts, namely samurai combat with the use of wooden swords, and in one of the pictures on a video I saw a helmet. This helmet seemed very beautiful to me. I thought this is a very cool thing and a true work of art. This is how a kendo helmet, which is called men in Japanese, formed the basis for drawing of a new portable acoustic system. Vitaly wanted the shape of the original object to only be hinted at, and the speaker to look modern and even futuristic. Finally, the main principle is nothing excessive. Naturally, in order to accommodate two speakers, the helmet had to be greatly expanded. But the master already understood how to make such a curved shape.
10 миллиметров толщина.
10 millimeters is the thickness of a single part, so the body comes out ribbed. And the more daring the shape, the more difficult it is to work with it later, depending on the model's complexity. I spent from 4 to 8 hours gritting the body with a sanding machine. This is 4 to 8 hours of monotonous work with a sanding machine to smooth out all the edges on the body. The back wall is made of a thick wooden panel, and all the necessary technical openings are cut out in it. Next, Vitaly covers the body with green Alcantara textile. This material is also called artificial suede. It is used for interior decor in expensive cars. The final elements are red wooden rim as the main accent and a steel grille, just like in a man helmet. Vitaly made it from 3mm mounts especially for the installation of suspended ceilings and covered it with a piece of acoustic fabric. The grille is mounted firmly and doesn't resonate or rattle. All this just so that in the end you can turn the volume knob, see this glowing light, see that life appeared inside. It turned on, and the light lit up. Some processes started up inside. The current started running through the wires along the diodes and the resistors, and it suddenly came to life. You turn on a track and you hear the sounds. To see how exactly the original speaker system sounds, we invited our sound engineer Roman to give his opinion. What do you say? Well, the sound is wonderful, transparent, and the high frequencies are pronounced. But without strain, and for a speaker of such a size, it has a surprisingly thick bass and the low frequencies. And despite the fact that the speakers themselves are located close to each other, a certain spatial effect can be felt. So you say there is a certain sort of stereo image present? Yes, there is. It's insignificant, unobtrusive. There is no, like, this sound flying from the right to the left ear. Super. This is a wonderful speaker for everyday listening. Thank you. Interestingly, Roman was unable to guess which object inspired Vitaly for this creation. It has a quite futuristic design, which they used back in the 1950s for the design of radios and televisions. I remember from the pictures that such shapes were prevalent. Maybe it reminds me of some sort of robot head. After all, you can clearly see the head and the neck. Everything just as the master intended, ambiguous and unobtrusive. Vitaly not only invents new body shapes for his acoustic system, he also finds more and more new ways to decorate the old ones. So the very first classical model was sent for a painting by the artist Rita Kalina, who specializes in mandalas. She used a drip technique to make the drawing look like an inlay. Today, this speaker helps its owners create the right atmosphere and mood at away yoga sessions. At first, Vitaly combined the production of acoustic systems with his main work on interior design. When it became clear that he simply could not fit both, he finally chose the former. The very thing that lights you up, that gives energy, and the reason I do this, it's this moment, from the idea in a sketch and then the concept goes into production. You observe this all, you see it, and you participate in this process, and a little life appears. A product from an idea and a pencil-drawn sketch over some period of time turns into a tangible physical object that performs its first function. It sounds, It looks good and it gives aesthetic pleasure. I do not know what can be compared to this. Probably it is the birth of a child, but I must honestly admit that to some extent these speakers are children for me. And these children have already been scattered across almost all continents. Today, Vitaly Pototsky is the only creator of originally designed portable audio systems in Ukraine. He's focused only on manual production with love for his unusual business, and this will suit him just fine.